Hey everyone, how's it going? Hope you're all doing great, as I always say, staying happy and healthy and all that good stuff. And in this video, since the last one did quite well, I thought I would do some more deep wood stories. So all of these weird encounters take place deep in the woods, or deep-ish in the woods. But anyways, if that sounds like something that you like, then definitely pull up a stump with me, and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. A few years ago, I took a trip to Scotland, and I decided to go hiking at one point, and then I ended up staying the night in this bothy. I lit a fire in the fire pit. I sat down to light my pipe, and I was just looking forward to a very quiet evening that was peaceful. A few hours later, at around 7 p.m. or later, someone knocks on the door and asks if there's room for one more. I answer the door and I greet the guy. He seems friendly and nice. We sit by the fire and chat for a little while, when eventually, a few hours later, he stands up, shakes my hand, and says, "Thanks for the company tonight. It's been nice to chat to the living for once." I laugh a little bit and bid him farewell. Later that evening, when I was settling down to bed, it struck me. Why did he show up that late at night? Why did he leave even later? Why did he say the living? Then I realized that I actually didn't hear him leave. The rest of the night I just stayed up looking out the window. So this happened a few years ago. I was way out in the woods with my brother and one of my best friends. We went walking down this path that's hundreds of years old, and we do this a lot at night. We come out to this clearing that's in like a semi-big field. A funny side story is that there seems to be a dispute between the local farmers which one owns the field. One time we even got chased by an old farmer with a big gut on a quad bike, and no shirt on, mind you. So anyways, we're standing there, smoking some cigarettes and just chilling. And all of a sudden, this ridiculously thick mist rolls over the field in the space of like a minute. We're all a bit spooked, but we think it's pretty cool, looks all spooky and stuff. We can't see 15 meters in front of us, not even exaggerating. I try to spook one of my friends who is a little bit freaked by running out into the mist. When I'm out there though, I hear this god-awful cackling, or laughing, coming from the other end of the field. It kind of goes up the hill, and then back down, and then the other side. It sounded like it was going in circles. This really disturbed me. All of a sudden I can't find my friend or my brother. After about 5 minutes, I find my brother. We think it's our other friend making noise. My other friend comes out of the entrance of the field. He said that he was a little miffed at us for trying to scare him, so he ran all the way back to the entrance so he could scare us. Then, what was making the noises? We ask him. Suddenly the mist rolls out of the field just as quick as it came in. We're all like, what the hell happened here? And the noises are gone. There's no more cackling. We walk back to the car, which is about a good half hour. The whole way, we hear rustling, snapping of branches around us, and shadows all the way back. We don't sleep well at all that night. When I was 20 years old, I was driving from Washington to Idaho, and we got stuck in traffic at 11 o'clock at night. My boyfriend and I decided to take a different way to avoid all the traffic. The GPS told us that this other way was faster, and it ended up being some really dark roads, no streetlights, no other cars, just miles of nothingness and trees. We proceeded up this horrible road. I started to get a bad feeling in my gut. We take a slight bend, going about 50 miles per hour. A girl was just standing on the side of the road, staring. She had to be about 10 to 12 years old, We drive a bit more down the road. There she is again. My boyfriend and I just look at each other, and we're thinking, what the hell is all this? The road is on a cliff now that drops about 3 feet from the road. We take another bend. There she is again. My heart is racing in my throat. She runs in front of the vehicle. I yell at my boyfriend. As soon as the car gets to basically touch her, she vanishes. At the end of the road, she is standing at the stop sign, waiting. We get closer, and this awful grin just appears on her face. We decide to run the stop sign and continue on our trip. Never again am I going to take creepy pitch black roads that are through the woods and on cliffs ever again. Now, I'm going to add a personal note here, and this is just a theory of mine because, again, personal experience. But every time that girl wasn't on the road, she was probably in their back seat. I'm from Australia, Adelaide, if you're wondering. Now, you can call it whatever you want, but since a lot of people have been calling them a goatman or a skinwalker, that's what I'll call it. Anyways, my mates and I are a bunch of dickheads, and we get a kick out of scaring people. We're pretty familiar with the surrounding area, in particular, Mount Barker, where we would drive up to whenever we could. It's great there because a lot of people go camping, and quite often they go out on some of the trails to explore and look for paranormal things at night. So, this was a few months back. I brought a voice recorder with me, and it was a pretty good quality one, and we decided to pretend that the skinwalkers, or whatever, were after whoever went up the trail that we were hiding around. We brought an ice box full of PB&J sandwiches and beer to keep us company. Eventually, we all split up. One of my friends went a lot farther ahead and hid, while the other was closer to where I was. The general idea was that once the group passed me, I'd record something that was said, and when they reached the farthest guy, he'd make some creepy noises and move the bushes to scare them into going back. Then, my other friend would shake some trees in front of them to make it look like that the monster had caught up to them. We waited for 2 hours, and our patience paid off. A group of 5, 2 girls and 3 guys were heading up the trail. I turned the recorder on. One of the girls ended up saying, "This place sure is creepy. We should go back." And I thought this was brilliant. I turned the playback volume way down and messed around to get the recording to start at those exact words. I'm not really paying much attention for a few moments until I heard the screams of the girls. I turned to look and noticed that they were noping away pretty quickly, especially when my other friend also made noises in the bush. They were pretty terrified too when I played the recording back pretty loudly, and soon enough we were all going around chugging beers and laughing at those guys. Anyways, my friend who was way up ahead mentioned that they had got scared before he even did anything. He said that he didn't shake the bushes, which we thought that it meant that they were just scared to begin with, nothing much. My other friend was a bit disturbed by that, saying that there was a funny smell further up the trail, but I just told him to stop being a pussy. As we kept drinking, we couldn't help but notice that there really was a smell in the air. It was like that smell from the stories, kind of rusty and dirty smelling, almost like battery acid. We were pretty freaked out ourselves, so we started looking around us, and that's when we saw it. It was 8 to 9 feet tall, pale and gray, but it was dirty and almost black in other areas. It was standing hunched over, just about 100 yards or so away. Its arms were so long, and they were moving a little bit, just in really unnatural ways. We tried to quietly get up and leave, but then it stood up, a lot straighter, and it let out this noise that sounded like the scream of a fox, but just deeper and spookier, probably because of what it was. It didn't seem to care about us, or even care that we were there. It just slowly slinked away into the shadows, but we still get the hell out of there. As we're heading back, we hear the same cry behind us, and then just noises of small gurgling, weaker and shorter versions of that cry. It almost seemed like it was trying to make sense. I read in one story that someone said that it was like a dog or a cat trying to speak, and that's pretty accurate. Either way, it didn't follow us. The next day we found the group of people we'd scared had got their stuff together and were leaving. It turns out that what scared them wasn't any of us. They had seen us in the trees, and it turns out that what they were running from was the pale figure they had seen behind him. We don't really do that in general anymore, and my friend has stopped trekking and going outdoors. All the times that people bring up it sounding like a person, or someone says that it could just be an animal, it just makes me think that it can probably mimic animal calls too. So this happened to me and my friend way back in 2013. We were out in the desert riding quads. We were trying to track down this old mine. We were looking for cool rocks and maybe a cool artifact or two. After some time, we locate one that's shown on the USGS topographic map that we have. The entrances are covered with gates and all that kind of stuff like you'd imagine. They smell nasty, like it smells like sewage coming into the main entrance. The mine has been taken over by bats. We break off some neat marble from a nearby outcropping and move on. We look for another mine I heard about from a guy at a local rock show. Supposedly, a good place to find nice malachite samples and the occasional piece of native copper. This other mine was supposedly a few miles from the previous one, kinda tucked away behind some rough terrain that keeps most off-roaders and casual explorers away. It's off my map, so I need to try to remember the landmarks and directions that he gave me. Sure enough, there is what was at one point an old access road for a mine, pretty much where the guy said it was. The road has been pretty much destroyed over the years, with several parts of it collapsing into deep ravines and washes. I've been riding since I was a small child, so I'm quite experienced with rough terrain. My buddy has been off-roading for several years as well. We still get to a point where we have to hop off the quads and continue on foot. We have to scramble through some rough terrain for about an hour, but eventually we find the mine. My buddy doesn't like going underground. He wants to sift through the tailings instead. He says, "I'll stay out here in case you get trapped." So I enter the mine and I make sure that we have our walkie-talkies so we can still stay in contact. It's a pretty good sized mine. Everything looks pretty solid and there aren't any unusual smells. I get about 50 feet in, I pass by a few minor side passages, I find some old minecart tracks and stuff like that, so I follow them. The tunnel splits, I follow the tracks and I find some old rusty piping. I also find a few old boxes, labeled Apache Powder Company. The boxes look mostly to be full of dust, but there are a few sticks of dynamite inside. I don't know if they were any good or not. I don't want to risk accidentally setting off unstable old dynamite, so I head back to the fork and I take the other tunnel. And I find what I was looking for. I find a pretty cool malachite deposit. I work at it with my pick and I eventually get a sweet chunk of fibrous malachite out. I put it in my backpack and I follow the tunnel back until it stops. And I notice a small room in the back. It's nothing much to see. But then I suddenly catch a giant whiff of, you guessed it, death, something decomposing. I look around, and I don't see or feel anything obvious that would tell me where the smell's coming from. There's a small exploratory tunnel in the back that looks to have partially collapsed. I shine my light in to check it out. There's a dead rabbit that's torn to pieces inside. It's still in the process of decomposition. I decide that the mine has been fun, but I'm done with it now. I radio my buddy to say I'm done and that I'm coming out. I hear him yelling something down near the entrance. I ask him what he's yelling about over the radio. He replies that we don't need to use radios if I'm just dicking around near the entrance. I reply by telling him that I'm probably a good 100 feet back in the end of the mine tunnel. There's a pause, and then he comes back talking much quieter. He says, "Man, there's something moving near the entrance." And I sit there. I tactically shit my pants. I ask him if it's a coyote or anything. It's barely out of the range of his light, and he's not going past the entrance, but he's quite certain from the shadows that it's definitely not a coyote. I say, well, shit, I'm trapped. He says that he'll try and hit it with a rock to scare it into a side passage. I get my rock pick ready. I'm really wishing at this point that I had brought my gun. He gives me a 3, 2, 1 countdown, and then there's a pause. Suddenly, there's a loud scream that echoes through the tunnel. It's deep and ragged. My buddy yells that it ran into a side passage, and he doesn't have to tell me twice. I'm already running. I'm running as fast as I can through the tunnel without tripping. The entrance is in sight. My buddy is visibly freaking out. I glance into a side passage as I run past, and I catch a glimpse of eyeshine and something pale and hairless. My sprinting intensifies. I meet up with my friend and we both take off. We can hear something thrashing around in the mine. I no longer care what it is. We cover the previously hour-long hike in maybe 15 minutes. We jump on the quads and ride away faster than was safe. We make it back and we decided that, well, we probably don't need to visit that one again. I still got my malachite though. We did end up checking it out again. This time, we were armed. Somebody seems to have collapsed the entrance, and there were a bunch of warning signs posted in the area. It's possible that there's still a vertical shaft somewhere that's uncovered, but to my knowledge, nobody's gonna get into that mine ever again. So I'm gonna be straight up with everybody. This is a Goatman story. I didn't know what a Goatman was until recently when I saw some of other people's stories on here. So, here we go. Back in 2012, we used to have bonfires every night. I'm in the Marine Corps Reserves, so while I'm home, I work as an Ohio State Trooper. Anyways, a bunch of my buddies and I were having a bonfire. We got everyone at my house around 7 p.m. or so. Then, we loaded them up into our vehicles, one of which was a Chevy Suburban. There was a Jeep Wrangler and a Ford 350 there. The spot where we have our bonfire was a mile back on some land that I own. There's this dirt path that we take down to the cabin. It starts out as going in between 2 fields, then through the woods, then it dead ends at our cabin, and our cabin overlooks a creek that eventually dumps into the Scioto River. We had about 24 people, packed into 3 vehicles and stuff. The Suburban is mine. We set off driving through the woods. It wasn't a big deal. But as soon as we got to the area, I stepped out of my vehicle, and I could smell that god-awful smell, that decay kind of smell. It just smelled like death, like an animal of some sort was rotting in the woods nearby. Everyone else said they could smell it too. I didn't think anything of it at the time. It's not uncommon to find a dead deer or something this far back in the woods that someone shot and couldn't find. It was the end of September, so hunting season was in swing. I started the fire, and I didn't think too much of the smell. We all eventually just stopped smelling it, almost like we got used to it. We played beer pong and had a generator going into the cabin. So my friend of mine, named Ryan, had been telling me that the girl that I had brought with me kept asking stuff about me to him, saying how much of a gentleman I was, so I knew that night I was hopefully going to get laid. Anyways, the fire was dying down, so Ryan was going to go get wood with a few buddies of mine. I had them take a radio with them to radio me if they needed help. The fire started getting real low, and it had been about 30 minutes since they left. I go on the radio, "Hey, where you guys at?" "Dude, chill, I'm on my way," Ryan quickly responded. They came back later with a lot of wood, got the fire going again, and then it eventually started to get late. People wanted to start going home, so after everyone left, only 8 of us remained. The girl I liked, Sarah, Ryan, David, and another guy, and 3 other girls. David, the other guy, and the girls were wasted as all hell and were flirting with each other. I continued to chill at the fire with Sarah and Ryan, talking about just random stuff. So, this is the point where it gets real late, around 2 a.m. The 3 girls, David and the other guy, went down to lay down in the cabin. Sarah and I stayed outside and talked for a while. Eventually, we started making out. I stopped when I heard this crackling sound outside. I looked over and I could make out a figure walking around near the tree line. I yell out, "Hey, what are you doing over there?" And then I hear, "Dude, chill, I'm on my way." This figure responded. It sounded vaguely like Ryan, but I swore Ryan was already in the cabin. Maybe he had walked out when I was occupied, but that didn't make sense. I said, "What?" He said, "Dude, chill, I'm on my way," in the same inflection. My hair raced up on the back of my neck. Sarah responded, "The hell?" I said, "Sarah, go inside and wake up everyone." She didn't hesitate. I walked over to my SUV, popped the trunk, and grabbed my gun. For some reason, I was shaking, and that smell was back again. I swore to myself, and I shoved the mag into the rifle and sent a round into the chamber. I walked around the SUV to where I saw the figure in the woods, and couldn't see it anymore. About this time, Ryan walked out of the cabin and looked at me like I was stupid. He said, "Dude, why do you have a gun?" I asked him, "Were you just out in the woods?" He told me that he had just woken up and had no idea what I was even talking about. I told him to take everyone back to their cars and come back with a gun. He got everyone into the SUV and they drove off. I sat there by the fire for a while, looking around me. I had a spotlight by my side, one of those 1,000,000 candle-watt power ones. I couldn't help but thinking that it was somebody trying to play a trick on me, but when you live 8 miles away from a prison, you can never really be too sure. The death smell was starting to get almost repugnant. I felt like gagging. I heard something walking through the woods again. I grabbed the spotlight and I stood up. I waited for a moment, and then I saw it again. The figure walked out of the woods and stood there looking at me. I flipped on the light. Its back was now turned to me, staring into the woods. I said, "Hey, I have a gun. You might want to tell me who the hell you are before I lay your ass out right now." Not a single word came out of the person's mouth. I swore again, and I started to walk closer. The person asked, "Dude, why do you have a gun?" Because then I stopped mid-sentence. I started to think about what it said and what Ryan said. It was mimicking Ryan. It repeated it again, but this time sounded closer to Ryan. I raised my rifle on the guy, and I said, "Ryan?" Its neck shifted a bit. It looked unnatural. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something about the man looked wrong. I heard music playing in the background, and I could see headlights coming through the woods. "Who are you?" I asked. The figure turned around and looked at me. Its facial features were all off. It looked like the other guy that was with Ryan, but the voice sounded like Ryan, and it stared at me with that weird mouth agape looking thing. I said, "Who the F are you?" I flipped my rifle off safe. Something in the fire snapped and made a loud noise, so I flipped around to see what was behind me. Then I snapped back to where the person was, and they were gone. I swore again, looking around for them. About this time, Ryan was parking the Suburban and getting out. He put a gun in his waistband. "Dude, what's going on?" he asked. I started to fill him in on everything. Then I asked him if everyone was with him. He told me that everyone in the cabin that was in the SUV, the other guy, Sarah, and the 3 girls, they were all with him. We sat by the fire and started waiting. The weird smell had went away for the time being. It was around 4 a.m. now. Sunlight should be coming up in just a few hours. At that time, the death smell had came back, stronger than ever, to the point that Ryan gagged and threw up. I got up and looked around, waiting to see the figure again. A few moments passed, and then I could see something on the ground coming out of the woods. I turned my spotlight and shined it on the figure. The man, who I had seen before, was on the ground, rolling around. Ryan said, "What the hell is that?" and he pulled his pistol out. We both stared at the man roll around for a good 20 minutes. Then he stopped and just laid there on the ground. The fire outside illuminated the figure through the window on the door. I could see it standing there, twitching. Sunrise started to come, but I could see the figure walk away from the cabin. I ran up and opened the door and walked outside. By this time, the sun was starting to come up, but it was still hard to see anything outside, except for the man. He started walking toward the woods, shaking and doing a weird twitch type thing. I shouted. The figure stopped and turned to look at me. I fired a round straight into its head. I seen the man drop like a rock on the ground and start twitching. I swore at it again, and I kept a bead on him, waiting for the twitching to stop. What happened next I still can't explain. It's like after a few minutes, the thing was done acting, and it stood up, and then walked off into the woods like nothing had happened. I lowered my rifle and watched as he made it to the tree line, turn around to look at us. I didn't see any wound, nothing. His face was untouched. The smell went away, totally. I couldn't smell it anymore. The man smiled at us and walked into the woods. By that time, we ran to the SUV, got in, and got the hell out of Dodge. We never spoke about what happened to anyone and feared that they would think that we were mental. I've been back to the place countless times now, and nothing. There's no smell, there's no evidence of anyone else being there besides me. I'm not sure if the thing, Goatman, I guess, has gone away, or if it just moved on to somewhere else. I don't know anything about them, so who knows? So, what'd you think of those? Let me know which one was your favorite one down in the comments. And in the description, I have a link to a PayPal and a Patreon, if that's something that you're interested in. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope there weren't any repeats. There were a couple of them that I weren't really sure about, but I couldn't find them on the channel, so I just decided that I would put them on in case I didn't. But if they are, I'll try to avoid that in the next video, which I think might be about creepy military encounters with cryptids and aliens and all that kind of cool stuff. So get subscribed for that, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump. Thank you for watching.